Hi.
Okay, what's happening? What is happening?
Hi, Rita.
Hello. Hi, Maureen.
You muted? Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Is that the same dog, Colleen? His face looks a little skinny.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's because I shaved him.
Oh, he looks more like a poodle.
Well, the hair is very poodle-like.
Mhm.
Behavior is very Yorkie-like,
Okay.
but he's given me a hard time, so I'm going to hold him for a little while.
All right.
Thank you, Maureen, for all your answers.
I think everybody's muted. I can't hear anyone.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear Julie? She said not anyone, so maybe she can't hear me now either.
Yeah,
So,
Let's see.
we can hear you fine.
I can't hear. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Can somebody talk? Because I can't hear any of you.
yes.
Oh, hello, Maureen.
I can't hear you. Okay.
I disappeared for a while. I don't know what happened.
I did too, Colleen. I came on and then it disappeared and then it came back.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Colleen, if you're talking to me. There are two Daves here.
Yes, I meant Dave Lee. Sorry.
Not
D
here.
and L. It's confusing sometimes.
Do we know who 720-397-1546 is?
Maureen might. I don't know.
Hi. Hi, this is Judy Dunlop. I'm here to speak tonight.
Hi, Judy. Thank you. Looks like we do not have a quorum yet.
Okay.
There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Don't we have Carson? And
We do now.
okay.
Can you hear us yet, Maureen? Can I send her a message?
You send her an email.
Yeah.
She might want to try to get out, leave, and then come back in.
Does that shut everybody off though if she does that? She's the
I don't
host,
know.
right?
Hmm. Right.
I think that's probably the solution though. I think Director Lee is right, or Member Lee.
I can't hear a damn thing and I don't know why. Sorry.
If you can read lips, we can hear you.
Yeah, but she does need to be able to hear if she's hosting the meeting, and she probably does
Why
need
can
to go out.
I not hear?
She probably needs to go out and come back in. It happened to me once at a council meeting.
Okay, I got, oops, here, I'm muted. I got it.
Oh.
We're
Can you hear
good.
us now?
I can hear.
Good. We could hear you all along.
Yeah, I know. Whoops.
Christopher, are you a regular member or an alternate?
I'm a regular member.
Great. Okay, so we do have a quorum. So let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Welcome, everybody.
Can I do roll call real quick?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry for not having everything working out real well. Okay, Julie Bowden,
Here.
Colleen Dickerson,
Here.
Carson Green,
Present.
Kara Frangipane. Nope. Monica Johnson. No. Sonia Strom. No. Christopher Underwood
Here.
and Robert Watson.
That's
And
a
you do
negative.
have a quorum.
Great, thank you. So welcome everybody to this regular meeting of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee on this March 17th, 2021. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I just realized I have green going on behind me, so hopefully no one got pinched today. First on our agenda is consideration of our minutes from our prior meeting in February. Would someone please to move to approve?
I move to
I'll move.
approve them.
Thank you.
I'll
Carson.
second.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Any corrections or discussions? Okay. So, so I don't see any hands raised, so we'll go ahead and please show your approval by raising your hand, those that move to approve the minutes as recorded. Keeps changing on me. So that's 4 of us. You got 4. Yes, all 4 of us. Okay, great. So the minutes as presented are accepted. And the next item on the agenda is the public forum. And we do have a member of the community, Ms. Dunlop. Judy, we do limit the comments to matters of code enforcement into those codes in Title 15 of the Municipal Code. Please state your name and address. And there is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Committee members may ask questions, excuse me, but there will not be any dialogue, and you've got 3 minutes. If you could state your name and what district you're in, Ms. Dunlop.
Judy Dunlop, District 1, 2935 South Tacoma Street. Couple things. The first thing is I'm calling to just talk briefly about the nuisance property at 2909 South Tacoma Street. I was there a couple of years ago reporting some similar things that are going on right now. Last week we had about 6 squad cars here. Officer Tish, who's been wonderful in the past, has kind of taken this over. And I understand there's cooperation from code enforcement and building and a number of issues there. And potential illegal activity like a flop house and so forth. On the plus side, this is the first time the sidewalk has been shoveled. I guess maybe they figured they couldn't get away with when we had 2 feet of snow on the sidewalk, so that was a plus. There's maybe been a few drive-bys by the police, which is helpful, and the neighbors have been calling, which the police are very supportive of. I'm the block captain, and so I appreciate, keep up the pressure. There's a very elderly neighbor that's next door, and she really does not need any stress with people coming and going or speaking loudly, and really not knowing, who's there. So I appreciate that. The other thing was on this emerald ash borer. I know it's a serious nationwide crisis. And I've been recovering from cataract surgery, and I'm kind of on the home stretch on that, but it's been a little difficult to read. But what I have read was I see there's a homeowners guide, which is good. And I'm wondering how that's either being distributed or disseminated. I'm wondering with regard to this crisis if there's any national programs that provide any monetary assistance for citizens in our community. I would really hope that there would be more on education than enforcement. I came across the website APHIS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. And it seems like, if I read that correctly, that they're part of the USDA and have done regulatory work, but they really now are leaning more on education. And that's what I would hope that we would have with either Parks and Rec, and I understand Dave Lee is a contact for anyone that wants to call in, and as much education as possible. I do have to comment on some of the marketing. I'm sorry if I'm hurting anyone's creative endeavors here, but your ash is on the line, and it's your ash. Is pretty mundane, kind of, that's the way you're trying to attract attention on a slang. But my comment on the it's your ash, you know, we live in basically a violent society, and I don't like seeing an angry tree. I want to see a healthy tree. And so, you know, that's just my comment on the marketing. There might have been a more positive way to present it. And that's all that I have for tonight.
Great. Would somebody on the committee care to respond to Ms. Dunlap's questions regarding EAB? I'm happy to, but if someone else would like to speak up. Okay. Regarding communications, we definitely recognize that education is more important than enforcement at this point, because if someone learns that they have the emerald ash borer, it's basically too late to save the tree. So the goal is to educate homeowners in Inglewood about the issue and inform them on what they can do now to either save the tree or remove the tree and replace it with a more resistant variety. In terms of monetary, we're actually working on the program right now, and there is a recommendation on the table to have some type of stipend, if you will, for homeowners that have damaged trees. But again, we're at this stage, we're talking about that. And then from a communications perspective, we have a subcommittee that's working directly with the communications committee at the city and also with Dave Lee to educate homeowners. We're doing things in the newsletter or the magazine. We're also doing things with social media. And I think you've probably seen what we've done on the website. There's also some things that are being done at the city level to raise awareness. Using city trees is a way to spread the message. Does that answer your question, Ms. Dunlop?
Yeah, can I just clarify the last thing that you said? You said using trees, other trees, or for something?
Yeah, so one of the ideas, and I believe we're moving forward with this, is to wrap the city trees that have been treated with a yellow tape that indicates that it is an emerald ash borer. Oh, I think Dave Lee is holding something up. So those will be in the parks. We can't see what you hold. If you hold it still, it's not coming through. Yeah, we can't see it, but it's basically a wrap that raises awareness of the issue, and, right? And it'll be on trees on city property in the parks, so that when people are out and about, they'll see that. Dave Lewis, you had your hand raised.
Yes. Hi, Ms. Dunlap. I just wanted to respond to your comment about 2909 South Tacoma. I usually don't comment on open cases. The Code Enforcement Division does not have an open case regarding this property. The concerns that you've raised, and I think you may have spoken with potentially someone from the impact unit, there is an impact case open for monitoring. Part of the home has been condemned already by the building department, and the front door, along with other areas of access, have been barricaded from the inside to try to prohibit the use of people entering the property. So that's what the city is currently offering at this time. We're unable to demolish the home or do anything from that standpoint. It's not something that the city can do from a legal standpoint.
Right, but I don't know if I can ask a question when you say partly condemned. So that was based on either electrical problems or plumbing problems or?
No problems, just they don't have, my understanding from the building department, and this is a building department concern, not a code enforcement violation. I believe the water has been shut off as well as the electricity, so that is an automatic condemn. And it has been boarded up. So we did make sure, I do want you to know, and this body know, that we do take these types of situations from a health and safety perspective. And it has been referred to our nuisance abatement team, which is a multi-tiered team that evaluates ongoing problem areas in the community. And this is one of them that multiple city departments are monitoring.
Great. Thank you very much for the update. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And feel free to call me directly anytime if you have questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me how to unmute now? If I want to stay on the call?
Yes, at the bottom, if you move your cursor over the black square where all of our faces are, go to the bottom left corner and hover there and it'll say mute.
She's on the phone.
Oh, I was just on the phone.
I can mute her.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
I'll
you.
mute you,
Thank you
Ms.
for your
Dunlap.
time and attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dunlap, for attending.
I had a question for her.
I just muted her. She'll have to unmute.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Do you have an ash tree, do you?
Yes, I do.
And what, are you having it treated?
Yes, I did. I believe it was last year.
And what company are you using?
The natural way.
Okay.
I was referred by the people that cut down, did a lot of my tree trimming. And I'm a holistic person, and so it was the least chemical based, but it met all the requirements. And he's, I believe, a registered arborist.
Right.
Okay. And I had, I think I want Dave Lee to address this, but you had a question about replacement trees and planting replacement trees. And I just found out that the Arbor Day thing is happening and the city has some trees for sale. It looks like a pretty good price, but I couldn't get enough detail. So Dave Lee, do you have anything to add about the Arbor Day Foundation?
You mean our tree sale?
Yeah, your tree sale.
Unfortunately, it has already been sold out.
No,
Yes.
I just saw it yesterday.
Yes, it is sold out. All the trees have been purchased already.
I was trying to buy a tree and I could not figure out why it wouldn't work. I thought it was a system issue, but you're sold out.
Yes.
Can we add to it to expand it? Because I couldn't figure out how many trees you actually had. And we're looking at needing quite a few trees. So can it be expanded? Can there be another program? Can it be larger?
I can certainly look into that. I know all the trees were purchased. We may be able to go out and get more, but at this point, I can't promise anything.
Okay, well, if you can, I want a redbud.
Okay.
Well, and in our list of ideas, providing homeowners with a cost-effective option for replacing their trees with something more resistant is certainly something on the table too. So, okay, so thank you, Ms. Dunlop, for attending. And we're going to go ahead and go with our next item. I have been in contact with Monica She is on her way to join us for the meeting. I wanted to amend the agenda to move the communication subcommittee update up into the unfinished business category because she has an update for everything that is going on with communications and EAB. And we might as well talk about it when we're talking about everything else. Per our previous meetings, we've talked about asking Dave Lee to come back and talk to us. It's been a little over a year since we initially had a conversation with him and learned about EAB. And since then, Dave, the committee has educated themselves by looking at our existing code to see if it actually helps the city and residents prepare for this and deal with the infestation. We've also researched other cities and what they have done with their programs and with code. And we are now at the stage where we're talking about what do residents and the city staff need, because our next step is to recommend changes to code if we see that needs to be done. So what we're really looking for is just an update from you. Has anything changed since we had you here last? I know that you've got some communication programs going on with the city also, like wrapping the trees.
Yes, and that's what I was trying to hold up. Am I an echo there?
You're fine.
Okay.
No, it's coming off fine.
We've been working with the communications department and Julie and Monica to come up with the tree wrap and the slogan on that. That's not my forte, so we let communications decide what to put on it. We're working on the QR code right now, doesn't seem to work. So we're working on that problem before we distribute or put out that tree wrap. There's also been updated information on the city's webpage under Parks and Recreation, and specifically under Parks. And I have to thank communications for all of that information and help in putting it up and disseminating it. So we're working on information and awareness for the community. I think they're also going to be putting up social media posts as well. And you can also get to it through inglewoodco.gov/EAB.
Nice.
And then beyond that, that's really where we're starting. Given all of the renewed interest in it, and thank you to this committee, I want to ask in our budget preparation for next year that we put implement or put back into use a community forestry program. That's something that we had for many years, and that fell to a budget cut at least a dozen years ago. And that gave citizens a subsidy for either removal, pruning, or planting new trees. In this instance, I think it would be good to make it EAB related, so that if it's removal of an ash tree, planting of a new tree that's a non-ash species, and see if we can't help citizens out, because I think that's going to be a huge problem coming forward as trees start to die.
I saw that mentioned in the plan that you put together, that there used to be, I was trying to find where, what it was called.
It might be in the management plan.
Right. Yeah, the forestry cost sharing / discount,
Yes.
providing a forest subsidy. Is that something that you'll be presenting to City Council and obtaining a budget?
That's what I would like to do, yes. We have to formulate that as a department first off, but as the different departments meet with City Council, and I think one of the first meetings may be in May to discuss the budget, that's something that we'll put in there as a capital program. And I'm sure if there is enough interest and enough funds for that to be established, that will be approved by council.
That would be awesome. Colleen, you had your hand raised?
She's muted.
Colleen. There we go.
Boulder finally put together to stop the spread, a quarantine area where they triple ground everything that would come in, and they would ask everybody to, whenever they were taking a tree down or whatever, to deliver it to this quarantine area, and they would triple grind it and burn it to prevent it. Is there any plans, or could there be plans for the city to start right away for an area over where they dump trees and stuff anyway, Christmas trees and rock and ballast and everything, a place for citizens to take it to the city of Inglewood, like a little quarantine area? That would save some money too.
Well, the quarantine that the state of Colorado had was lifted. Initially, when Boulder experienced the outbreak, they quarantined the Boulder city, Boulder County, and then they had one landfill inside of that county line, and they had to do an extension out to another landfill, which was out towards Erie, Colorado. And that since has been just canceled because EAB has spread beyond Boulder County, and they saw no need for it. It was never to completely stop the spread of it, but it was implemented initially to slow it down. And then as in regards to damaged wood or diseased or dead ash trees, that's a continuing problem. Right now, we don't have a storage area large enough to accept everybody's wood that's cut down. That's something that's mentioned in the management plan. But again, that may be a county-wide ask for help or for land to put that wood on.
Okay.
I mean, does that answer your question?
Sort of, but yeah, I was hoping that we could have a place in Inglewood for Inglewood residents that can't afford to cut down trees and have them, pay for having them dumped somewhere. If we had a place to dump now for dead trees. We don't have yet, we know of any emerald ash borer, but it might be a good idea to have a plan and an area. If we take in Christmas trees, then maybe we could take some of the dead and dying trees. And then if we end up with a lot of emerald ash borer infected trees, I guess we could deal with that or not.
We just don't have the room right now anywhere to take those trees in. Keep in mind, Christmas trees are, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet tall, and we have the means to run those through a grinder. When you're talking about emerald ash borer and an ash tree, you're talking about trees with a huge diameter, and we don't have a tub grinder. And then specifically when trees are ground, it's supposed to be an inch by X that they're supposed to be ground to in order to kill any of the larvae or beetles in those trees. So there's a bunch of different specifications for that. We don't have a tub grinder. And I went to a site in Boulder that they were storing some of the wood. The area was huge. When you start talking about bringing in tree trunks and everything else, it's a huge undertaking. And right
Thank
now,
you.
I don't believe we have the capacity.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you.
Carson, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, but that last exchange answered my question. Thank you.
Dave, I thought there was somewhere where you had talked about utilizing the wastewater treatment plant facility as a place to have residents dump their, diseased trees. Did I dream that?
Well, I don't know that you dreamt anything, Julie. We do have a small a chain link in area, and we grind up all the Christmas trees, and we'll grind up branches from storms or from trimming and removal. But it's nowhere near enough capacity to start taking logs and tree trunks and things like that.
Okay,
And then we also use that mulch back out in our parks.
sure.
Around trees and in our shrub beds and things like that. And we also allow homeowners to come take some of that mulch for their own purposes. But it's just, when you add up all the trees that are going to be dying, there's just no way that we have the capacity. And we don't have a tub grinder that could even grind up tree trunks.
Okay. Over the past year, have you learned anything about our existing code that you thought, gee, it would be helpful if our code was changed to better support this incoming infestation? I mean, is there anything off the top of your head that's come to your attention?
In the last year, I really haven't focused or concentrated on the city's code regarding forestry or trees. So I have to plead ignorance on that. I really don't know. I haven't looked at it. I would rather educate than be punitive. And maybe Dave can speak to that as well. I don't know. But I think we're going to have a huge issue with people who can't afford to take down trees or treat trees, or are even willing to treat trees. And so having a code probably similar that mimics Boulder or Longmont or some of those other cities who have forestry departments might be worth looking into.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dave before we move forward? Monica, welcome. And Cara and Sonia, I see you've also joined. Monica, I've amended the agenda to move the communications update up to this section since it's all about EAB. Can I put you on the spot and have you provide your communications update now?
Yeah. Well, we had a meeting, what was that, last week?
Mhm.
And I was hoping that I would have received, I don't have any of the brochures that they were developing to show you. And I don't know if Dave talked about it at all, but okay. So they're using Bang the Table to create a landing page. They've decided that a survey per se might not be the best way to go. There's going to be an app where you can plug in if you have an ash tree, so that the city can kind of chart that or graph it. Maybe Dave can explain that better. And there's going to be a flyer that will go out to all residents. I don't know if it's going to be a mailer or a door hanging, but we reviewed the content of that to make it more like the most user-friendly that it can be. So that's getting revamped right now. Our article just went out in the magazine, and I thought, the best thing about that article was the basic price comparison of the three approaches. I think that what Dave said was exactly right, to be educating the public and giving them opportunities to make choices if they're in a position to do so is great. And I don't know if being punitive about this specific issue is a great idea at this point. I know that, I feel like what you and Colleen worked on as far as the tree code is like a bigger wide, a bigger issue that way, that it can be addressed that way. Let's see. I looked in on the website and I don't see the landing page yet, and they've kind of translated. It looks like the websites are kind of like combined right now. So there's new pages, but then you click on things and it takes you to the old information still. So I'm sure that those will be linked up at some point. But I know Colleen had the concern that, people who don't use their computers need to be just as informed as people who do. And so that flyer is going to have the what do you call the code that you take a picture of? The QR code. Yeah. So it will have, so all the materials are going to have that same QR code on them. The Englewood puts out a newsletter also, and that's going to be made available for pickup at the Malley Center. And then another item that was discussed and their team was going to get on was reaching out to the Englewood Herald to have an article put in there. We found a couple citizens who would be willing to do a live video spot about the topic. But I got the impression at the meeting that we want to hold off on that just a minute. And I don't know, Julie, if it was because to do live footage, the trees haven't bloomed yet. I'm not quite sure what the deal is on that. So that would probably be the thing that I need to get on the stick about the most is social media posts. And if we're going to do videos, the city's going to do that. Their team is going to do that. They have that. They have someone on their team that was a reporter who they said would be great to do those kind of man on the street, short little interviews for social media. So, and that's one thing I'm excited about. I just posted on Nextdoor, which I never do, a couple weeks ago, just to see, to put it out there. I put a picture of the ash borer and, just ask people, do you have a tree? What's your story? And a ton of people responded. So, I think it can be that simple. So that's pretty much what's in the works right now. I don't know if I missed anything.
Yeah, I think it's impressive. I mean, they have a comprehensive communications plan above and beyond what we're already doing for EAB.
Mm-hmm.
That if they revise that and get that, maybe we can share that with the committee at our next meeting. I think it's a little bit more than we had thought of, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked up on the website, the englewoodco.gov/EAB site is up and live and working. Looks very nice, by the way. I don't know, Dave, if you were part of that in terms of the content on there.
Really, all of that came through the communications department. We're supposed to run everything now through communications, that we have a big enough communications department. They're the experts. So anything that we do as a city needs to be vetted through communications. So that kind of is where it goes to. And then the other, if I can, on top of what Monica had said, I've got a number of tree identification apps on my phone, all free. And the most recent one that I found is called Plant Net, N-E-T. It's a free application. And what's so good about it, it doesn't require any expertise in diagnosing leaves or bark or anything like that. You take a picture of the flower. In this case, the flower on ash isn't conspicuous, but you can take a picture of the bark and it will ID the actual tree. And I think that's a better way for the novice homeowner to confirm whether they have an ash, rather than go through a key or ask whether it's a pinnately compound leaf or whether it's alternate or opposite leaves, things like that, that may cause people to scratch their head or just get frustrated. So that is a really cool program. I would urge everybody on the committee here to download it and play with it. You can identify house plants with it as well as trees and anything. So, and then it will show you, if you do it like on an iPad, it will show you the percentage of what they believe the correctness is. So if you snap something, it'll say they're 67% positive that this is the correct ID or so forth. But you have to learn to work through it because there's a lot of plants that aren't native to Colorado or even the US that are in there. So it'll also do tropical plants and things like that. I actually played with it. I have a Norfolk Island pine and I snapped a picture of the leaves and it identified it.
So it's plant net, not plant snap.
Plant net.
Okay. Now,
Plantnet.org. I just looked at it. It's really cool.
yay.
So
This is the kind of thing I feel like we can just post on Nextdoor. Like, I'm on it. Great. All those little things. And I just want to say, I love that the city is like getting a handle on all those inputs and streamlining the messaging. You know, they're the professionals. And a part of what's been daunting about this for me is like kind of feeling like because it's not in my wheelhouse. So getting our committee together has been really great. And you've been like, having you there has just been awesome. So thank you. And thank you for coming to our meeting.
So Dave, can the city update the EAB website or webpage to download the free app, plantnet.app?
Yes, I can get them to do that. This is something I recently found since our last meeting with the communications department. And so, yeah, we can get them to do that. And I think getting that message out, it'll be a lot simpler for homeowners.
Okay. Colleen, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, it was sort of an accident, but I couldn't hear what the name of that program was. Is it plantnet.org?
Yeah, I think they have an app as well, but you can use the website too. You can put pictures right in through their website and access it there too.
Okay. And
plantnet.org.
Okay.
So
and a further follow-up question, that I further follow up, if I downloaded it to my phone, would I be able to go out to a neighbor and help them identify their trees that way? Yes. Oh, cool.
Yes. So they have a laptop or a regular computer program, and they have one for your phone as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions for Dave? Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us and kind of brainstorm where we are and what we've got going on with the city. It's exciting. And I know when this does hit, it's going to hit really fast. And all the work that we've done to prepare for it, hopefully we have everything in place to help minimize the damage. The next item on our agenda was kind of a brainstorm.
Can I ask a question real quick, Julie?
Sure. Yes.
Sorry, I'm hearing the echo.
Yes.
I was just curious, do you have any update on how far south it's been identified?
Last year, it was identified as far north as the southern portion of Fort Collins, but most recently, Arvada and Westminster and Broomfield are the three major cities that it's been positively identified. And they don't confirm anything. You have to have samples, or the state has to come out and confirm it. You can't say, we got it. It has to be positively identified by the entomologist in the state, and then they make the declaration that it's in Denver or in Inglewood or wherever.
But it hasn't been positively identified in Denver yet?
It has not.
Thank you.
All right, so at this stage in all the work that we've done, I mean, we're pretty ready now to take a hard look at our code and see if there's anything that we recommend changing or adding. In order to do that, I asked the committee to take some time and brainstorm with yourself in terms of what do residents need from from, if they have an ash tree, what do they need in terms of support? And what does the city need in terms of trying to protect our tree canopy? And then how can we best enable code enforcement? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I did receive some input from people, and what I did is I combined all the suggestions into one document so that we weren't flipping back and forth between documents. Change that view here real quick. No. All right. I don't know why it's doing this. One page, there we go. All right. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to open this up and ask people to, I'm going to kind of go around the room and ask you to provide your insight or your feedback. So from a residential perspective, we said that residents with ash trees need help identifying a tree, determining the condition of their tree, what mitigation or treatment options that they have. They may need help with tree removal and tree disposal. And then there was also an idea that residents could be incentivized to proactively treat or remove trees. And that's kind of in line with the subsidy that you were talking about, Dave Lee. So I'm going to ask members of the committee, is there anything else that residents need from us? Carson? Does it look good?
Well, I know it's on the next page, but I think we definitely need an up-to-date list of arborists that are available, and maybe even it'd kind of be nice to have the ability to give a sense of what treatment costs, maybe by size of tree, or I don't know, that may not be realistic, but to have a sense of what and maybe even as an incentive, say, like, if you treat it before it gets infested, your costs might look like, $100 a year, but if you have a huge tree and it gets infested, it could be many thousands to have it removed. Like, that's another incentive concept to put out there.
Okay.
Monica, can I chime in a little bit?
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Or Julie, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
We did talk about the list of arborists, and there is a list that the finance department has regarding arborists who are licensed to work in Inglewood. We don't, as a city, want to get involved in making a recommendation of this arborist company over that, but what we can provide is a list of arborists who are licensed to work in the city of Inglewood. And then the communications department, in the information that they put out, and I believe it's on the park's website under EAB, listed what a 12-inch diameter tree, caliper tree, would cost, which was approximately $150 to treat. And that treatment typically is a one-time per year treatment. Now, having said that, it depends on the type of insecticide that you're going to use. They have trunk injections, they have soil drenches. There are also bark sprays. All of them are effective. All of them are different chemicals, and there may be a cost difference between all of them. It's kind of like buying generic over a brand name.
Mr. Lee, do you have what does it take if you're already, first of all, what exactly makes someone an arborist? Is that a state license or?
No, there is no state license per se. I guess what makes somebody an arborist is knowledge and experience in trees and training and having a business. Now, having said that, there are arborists who are certified and there are arborists who are non-certified. And what we're trying to put out to the public is please find a certified arborist. They're the ones that are the most knowledgeable, the best trained, and I think the most dependable. There are a lot of, in any industry, there's a lot of shady individuals. You can find something for cheap, and cheap isn't always the best. And so we're asking people to seek out certified arborists.
Do you know what the organization that they would be certified under is?
Yes, it's called ISA, International Society of Arboriculture. And they should be able to produce for you a credential that shows that they're certified. I'm a certified arborist, and I've got a credential that I can produce that shows that I'm certified.
And then do you know what it takes for an existing certified arborist to become licensed in Inglewood?
There is a test that the city and county of Denver administers, and a test that the city of Lakewood administers. And if an arborist passes that test, they're licensed in those two communities. And we have a reciprocal agreement that if they're licensed in Denver or in Lakewood, that they're accepted here to do business.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher, you have your hand raised.
Oh, yes. Just one comment I had when looking through the meeting notes under the resident bullet points. One thing that crossed my mind is it might be good to put some kind of time frame on there as to when residents should get started looking into this, whether it's contacting a company for treatment or for removal, or just awareness as to the coming soon within the next couple of weeks or the next month or so. Pay attention to this. And the main reason I bring that up is I recently had an elm tree in my backyard removed, like about a 75-foot elm tree. It was huge. It was a lot of work, a lot of money. And it took me about 3 months before I could even get a tree company out to remove it. So in terms of planning, I really had to take that into account. So just one thing to maybe for consideration for residents, that it may take a little while to have a company come out depending on their workload or their backlog.
All right. How about you, Monica? What other needs would our residents have that haven't listed here?
Well, I liked the idea of incentivizing people to treat their trees. I think that everyone who's chimed in on giving people a better idea of the cost effectiveness of treating, especially with the mature tree, is really important. And on our communication with the communications team at the city, we discussed just the need to continue sending the message through multiple modalities. So the magazine, the website, the newspaper, the flyer, and that the message needs to be sent now and from now on. And it needs to be kind of omnipresent. So I guess that would be what I think is bringing awareness to the issue itself is the most important thing. Because like here we are all knee deep in it, learning more and more about the emerald ash borer every week, but we just need people to know, with the tree wraps, with the flyers, with the social media. That's step one. Without awareness, you can't do the rest of the steps. So I just think that's kind of paramount. And now is the time.
Thank you, Monica. Hey, Carson, I was going to also, you were talking about the cost of, how much it would cost to treat a tree and the effectiveness of that. The spring magazine actually had a cost comparison in the article in terms of, what it would take to treat the tree versus what it would take to lose the tree. Did you see that? Good. Okay, good.
Yeah, thanks. I just think that's a really strong thing to keep repeating, because for any mature tree, it's going to be thousands probably to remove it.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The cost to treat and proactively protect it is a lot less. Okay, moving to more committee members. Colleen, was there anything else that you could see from a residential perspective that they would need?
Well, mine are in the form of questions. How would we create the guidelines and recommendations for handling infected trees on private property? And I know Dave Lee mentioned something about reestablishing a certain department or program. Will that be built into the code? And are we going to develop guidelines for handling infected trees on private property? And a second question was, how will we address the financial impact to citizens and property owners as a result of these guidelines and recommendations? Is it going to be through whatever program, or we going to put it in a code? And so I think that's what we need to know.
Okay. So the existing code does specify that if a resident has a diseased tree and does not treat it, that the city has the right to come in and treat it or remove it.
Not sure. I thought one of the things that we needed to address was the diseased tree, because it was just whatever they decide, but we don't have anybody deciding that. So that's why I'm asking. Are we going to develop guidelines for this?
Okay. Did I adequately reflect that here, Colleen?
I still have a question as to what, about the city's authority to come in on private property, but that's just a question.
Okay. All right. And I actually reviewed the code again, and the city does, the way the code is written is the city does have that right. So moving forward, Sonia, may I call on you to see if there's anything else that residents might need?
Yes. Start video. Am I on? Sorry.
You are. You're there.
Oh, good. I just didn't see myself. I was just wondering that I think a lot of people will be caught off guard in some ways financially if they have to bring down their tree. So I wonder if maybe the city would have maybe like a 1 year, 18-month payment plan or something if they have to have trees removed. I know a few years back, Aurora was doing that. Like if you had a diseased tree in your front yard, they would come down and cut it down, and they give you 1.5 years to pay them back.
Okay, great. Anything else?
No, that's it. Everyone's been so thorough.
Yeah, and I believe we have one more person, Cara. I don't see you on my screen, but I think you're still here. Are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you. It's okay. I don't need to see you.
I don't have anything to add. I think everybody was, covered everything before you got to me. So thank you.
So I have a question, and it's kind of popped into my mind a couple times, and I wanted to get your feedback, the committee's feedback on it. Is what if my neighbor has an ash tree and they're not doing anything to protect my tree? Do we want neighbors to have the right to protect their trees from neighboring infestations?
I mean, what would that look like? Are you just talking about like a a way to report that to the city
Yeah,
or something?
I guess you could do do the city app and report that there's a diseased tree, but then it becomes the issue of code enforcement.
I'd be interested in Supervisor Lewis. Is that something that currently ever happens?
So when we do receive tree complaints, what we currently do is we take a brief inspection. We're not arborists. We do issue them what we call our tree notice, which requires them to have a professional licensed arborist evaluate the tree. They're required to provide us with what the recommendations of the arborist are, and they're required to follow those. If they choose not to, and they choose not to obtain an arborist's opinion, we do issue a summons into court. The court can compel them, and as part of that, we prefer not going on people's properties to do abatements. It becomes a very large liability for the city. We prefer to have a court order where this judge would give them an opportunity or a time frame to have that tree removed or taken care of in a manner that would be appropriate. And if not, then the judge can order the abatement of that tree, and we will charge that person for the abatement plus a 20% fee. And if they choose not to pay the city back, then the city will lien their property. So that's kind of the general steps for any abatement in the city.
Okay. So basically residents already have that right. You know,
Yes.
if got it. Okay.
And again, the code does specifically say that the city can go on the property. We really only use that if it's an abandoned property or a property that doesn't have a home on it. But due to property rights and maybe some conflicts, we really do have to respect the owners of property rights and their constitutionality. And we really do need that protection of a judge. It protects us civilly as well from being sued if we do remove somebody's property because it is a judge's order.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move now to the.
Can I ask I wanted to ask Mr. Lee a related question that may lead to another resident thing. So I know that a bunch of trees that are on city property are ash trees. Do you have a sense of what % of those the city's going to try to save and treat versus take down?
Yes. We had, and I can't tell you because I haven't looked at the updated tree inventory. We had 376 ash trees of varying sizes and ages and conditions of health. And what we've done is go back around, reassess all of them, and then any that we deemed not worthy of saving because they're just gnarly, they're sickly looking, they're just not a great tree. We're in the process of removing those now. And then also trying to plant other trees beyond, or, besides ash species.
And is the city treating then the ones where you're not removing yet?
Yes.
So has that treatment already started?
That will start this year.
And is that administered by city employees or is that outsourced to arborists?
It's administered by city employees.
Is it even realistic to consider having that program that the city is doing be something that citizens could buy into, to have city employees do the treatment for citizens in a way that they pay for somehow? I mean, that might be, I'm trying to picture like expecting all the people with ash trees to deal with treatment when that is going to be the easiest way and have to make those arrangements on their own. We know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to fall through the cracks of that kind of expectation. And I'm wondering what possible way could we offer, like a bulk deal or organized treatment, something that people could just opt into as a citizen? Is there any chance something like that could happen?
At this point, I don't believe so. The city of Inglewood doesn't have a forestry department. We have a parks department. and we're capable of maintaining and managing what we currently have. But to ask us to go out and treat or deal with citizen trees, we couldn't deal with athletic fields and straight baseball fields and mow grass and plow snow and do all the other things that we do on a regular basis, pick up trash, remove graffiti, if we had to deal with citizens' trees.
That makes sense. I figured that was the case, but wanted to ask. And then in regard to, does the city right now ever outsource to arborists when there's too much for the employees to be able to handle, or is that you always are able to figure it out?
We do that. We're not set up, like I said, we don't have a forestry division in the city of Inglewood. So we have a limited amount of knowledge and skill base. So a lot of times we do contract out with other arborist companies.
Okay. So yeah, Chair Bowden, I'm curious if, you know, as a benefit to citizens, if there could potentially be yeah, I see you added it to the list, but some kind of bulk deal, coordinated or organized, whether it's actually official city or we could encourage someone to start that. I mean, there's got to be a way to like make it so that not everybody has to do their own negotiation with an arborist to be able to get, when we're going to have, you know, potentially thousands of properties need this.
You know, that's something that maybe neighborhood watch groups that are already organized could manage. We dealt with something like that up in the mountains when mountain pine beetle was a big thing, where we got a number of neighbors together and banded together and said, you know, we want all of our trees treated. So we would contact an arborist company to come in and spray our trees. And I may have 3 or 4 trees. My neighbor may have, you know, half a dozen. But when you get everybody together, it helps reduce the price. And
yeah, that'd be
so
huge.
if somebody in the neighborhood could take charge of that possibly, or even a neighborhood watch group might be a solution.
It's a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Anything else? All right. So in terms of the city, you know, the city has a job to protect our tree canopy and the health and safety of our citizens. So here's some of the ideas that we had is that the city needs to be able to treat or remove any diseased or infested tree on private property if the resident agrees in writing to pay for the cost of such a service. If the owner doesn't remove the tree, then the city needs to have the right to remove it for them. If the owner doesn't treat or remove trees, then the city would seek reimbursement. And I believe our current code is set up to do this right now. We need to protect or prohibit ash trees. Right now, our code allows ash trees. Trees that are in the right of way need to be protected by a resident, even though it's on city property. The city needs to be able to enter private property without a warrant to inspect a tree. And then same thing, it makes sure diseased and dying trees in public rights of way are addressed as city issued. I think, Colleen, that was your suggestion. I wasn't sure what as city issues meant.
Yeah, I've rethought that. And I have some questions regarding the right of way and private property as far as the city's concerned that I'd like to pose and see if we can get answers to. Does the city require permits for the right of way? Is one. What authority does the property owner have over rights of way? Who has control and authority over the right of way? And who authorized or authorizes the planting of trees and or plants in the right of way? I believe Dave Lewis made the point that they don't go on to private property without court issues because of private property is private property. And they're talking about plantings in public property. So I have some questions about whether or not the code is really serving both the city and the citizens. And those were my questions.
So that mostly has to do with right of way. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay. Okay. I'm going to go, and then here's some other ideas that we had. We talked about having an inventory of city-owned and residential ash trees. The city does have an inventory of city-owned trees, but we don't have an inventory of residential ash trees. And it was something that we actually talked about with the communications group on why we would really need to have an inventory of residential ash trees. Is there an argument for going through that effort? If not, I'd like to take that off because it's just, I don't know what would we do with the list of ash trees on residential property. Okay. We also talked about having a central disposal place for the trees that are removed. We want to have an arborist to advise and support residents, and I have a check mark by that because we already have that right now. Adding a purpose for our tree shrub code, when we looked at other cities, all of them had, if you will, an overarching purpose for their tree code, and we don't have anything like that. We just go right into codes, and if we're going to go through and revise it, I think that it would be appropriate to have some type of statement there in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with tree and shrub codes. We also had the idea to oversee pesticide use. Is there any feedback on that? I'm not sure that we want the city to have to oversee the use of pesticides. I don't know whose idea that was, but I'm not sure that that's something we would want. Is there comments on that?
I don't know if you can see all of our hands. Colleen's raising her hand.
I can only see 5
Okay.
people. So go ahead. Please
Okay.
go ahead and speak.
Well, who did you call in? I'm sorry.
You. I can't see anything with sharing my screen.
Okay. So as far as having a central collecting place, I don't know if the city has a central place. I know like where we dump Christmas trees in certain places and whatnot, but there's no longer any restrictions. And Dave Lee, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The lumber from an infected tree was prohibited from being transported at one point, and that's been dropped. So I think that's why that was on the list. And then pesticides, of course, we're concerned about monitoring those, but honestly, I mean, just to take a step back, I think one of the things our committee is really good at is going down a rabbit hole. And right now, we need to get the word out and give the options that, you know, like we need people to know if they have an ash tree, to know that it's a thing, and to look into getting it treated. I mean, I think we're like 10 steps ahead of ourselves there. So that's just my response on those 2 items that you just brought up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have their hand raised? I'm unable to see if you do.
I do.
Thank you.
Colleen.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I have on the whole idea of pesticides is that my understanding of the licensing from Heather Driscoll was that what they call an arborist is somebody who is certified by the state to handle pesticides. But I don't see that there would be any other need, you know, as long as we're using somebody who's licensed to use pesticides certified by the state. There wouldn't need to be any oversight by anybody else.
All right. Any other comments on that? Dave Lewis, I see you.
I just want to also caution this committee about going down the pesticide concern, because it really does hamper property rights and the owners from treating vegetation or trees on their own. I will let you know that I'm working on, in conjunction with state legislation, on a bill for the state to ban cannabinoids, which is responsible for bee deaths, but that would translate into a bunch of different regulatory things from the state level. But I would just caution you that you would be limiting the options for homeowners to treat their own properties.
I went ahead and removed it. I think we're all in agreement that that's probably too far-fetching. And as Colleen pointed out, the fact that we license arborists and you have to use a licensed arborist pretty much takes care of, you know, the appropriate use of pesticides. We talked about having a current list of certified tree operators. I know the communications department is working on getting that list updated and available on the website. We now have an EAB page on the website. There was an idea to provide EAB updates via an opt-in email. And Monica, I'm not sure that that's needed if you were talking about having this app called Bang the Table where people could get on and get information. Is that correct?
No, all of it is, at the last meeting, what I understood was that all of it is necessary and helpful. And what we discussed at the meeting was having a specific address for people to send their questions about their ash tree or their, you know, even if they suspect they have one. And we discussed who would answer those emails. And Dave Lee offered to be the main person who responded. And then we had a discussion around like, well, perhaps members of this committee might have access, one or two of us that are in the loop on this, or other people at the city who would be, you know, have the time and have done the work to answer some or field some of those questions. I think, Dave, is that what you gathered at the last meeting? That what I gathered was that we should be hitting this home in every way we can, and that email would be made available for people to reach out in all those separate, you know, and all those different forms of outreach that we're doing. So Dave, maybe you can correct me if
I think you're close there, Monica, on that. You know, there's several different varieties of ash. There are different identifiers, and I would be willing to help anybody who wants to take this on to show them how to ID the different types of ash through the bark, through the buds, through the leaves, things like that. Also, again, I would imagine that you can call any arborist company and ask them to come out and identify if you had an ash tree and give you a quote for treatment, probably free of charge.
Well, and you can imagine the questions would vary, like having that email address would allow people, because everybody's not going to look at every resource. So if you had like, you know, an It's Your Ash email address where people could send their questions that don't want to look through everything, they can just send you a general question and we can point them to the web page, send them the link, you know, direct them a little, you know, just give them that human connection to help them and to make it, I think that makes people more invested in looking into this and taking action. So Thank you.
So we do have a dedicated email, or we're planning to have one. Is that correct?
Well, it was discussed. I don't know if that has happened or if it will. I'm assuming at our next meeting, we will
Okay.
determine
Okay.
that. That was one of the things that was brought up, but not,
Okay.
you know, tasked at that time.
I think that's something that communications could probably tackle and get an email mailbox specifically for EAB questions, and then possibly that, depending on the type of information requested, that could be transferred out to either myself or somebody else in the city that potentially could answer those questions.
Okay.
Chair Bowden, and you replaced what was already listed there, which I thought the one that was listed there would also be good too. I kind of see that as two separate things: a dedicated email for questions, but an opt-in email list for, if you have an ASH or you're interested in it, that you could subscribe, just like another category of emails you can subscribe to with the city, than any EAB updates you'd get. Like, I know I'm subscribed on probably 10 different categories with the city, email service. So it could be just another category. And whenever we want to do an update, that's an easy way to push it out. And there's no reason you couldn't have an easy sign up on the EAB page where you could just put your email address in so that you get updates whenever there's new information or updates.
Who does those categories at the city and sends those out? Do we know?
I mean, I submitted on a form. I don't know who. I'm sure that different departments post for the different.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Maureen, do you know how that works? The updates that go out in email based on what you've subscribed to.
I can't see. Is she talking?
I don't know. She doesn't have video or audio on.
Okay.
Monica has her hand raised.
I would just say that sounds like a great question for Chris Harguth and his
Okay.
team. I geek out on that stuff too. I'm signed up for like way too many of them to look at.
Yeah,
So, and not everybody's going to click on those, but it's just another great way. And what we want to do is just repeat that information over and over again in all of those spaces.
Yeah, there just has to be somebody in the back office that actually manages that whole process. So I imagine they've got something set up since there's so many categories already. Okay. License those who cut, prune, or remove trees. I think we've already got that covered. Provide replacement trees at a reduced rate. We've talked about doing that. And Dave's putting that in his plan for the subsidy. Encourage diverse trees to be planted. Obviously, we're already doing that with the tree program, and then also if we do provide replacement trees at a reduced rate, we can make sure that they're diverse in their offering. Contract with a group of arborists to provide low-cost removal services and/or identification services, and I think we've pretty much said that the city's not going to be doing that. That was something that the homeowners would have to do on their own.
Why is that not, or why is that completely ruled out?
Dave Lee?
I can talk to that, Julie. We don't endorse one company over another. It may give an unfair advantage. It may seem that we have a bias. And therefore, what I would tell people is we don't recommend any one arborist company, but go check out the list of licensed arborists that are licensed to do business in Inglewood and call a few or select one from that group.
I mean, the city is considering going to single hauler trash and recycling, which the argument is improve, benefit for citizens, environment, cost, by having a bulk agreement. I mean, obviously that's not for sure or anything yet, but it's not like it's impossible for the city to benefit citizens by doing a bulk agreement with, a forest service and making it cheaper to citizens. I mean, I don't want to rule that out. Like I get why it's why there's resistance to it, but it doesn't have to necessarily be pushing one arborist over another. It could be coming up with a deal for a group of arborists to participate in at a fixed rate or something, something to benefit citizens and making it cheaper by bulk negotiating.
I disagree.
Who spoke up? Sorry, I can't see.
Me, Julie, it's Maureen Willis.
Okay,
And the city would basically be saying if we entered into a contract, first off, it causes some liability for the city. But not only that, we're saying you can't go out and find your own arborist for your own personal property of a tree on your property. You're going to have to use ours.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that the city make a bulk agreement as an option, not to prevent anyone from making their own deals with any licensed arborist, but come up with a way to make it to where there is a bulk option for fixed rate, cheaper, instead of just putting every citizen on having to do this themselves and negotiate for themselves and make it a great market to be an arborist. Have collective, a collective option. And everyone seems to resist it. Maybe I'll do it on my own. It's just, the whole, if the city's unwilling to even consider things like that, they shouldn't be willing to consider pushing everyone without choice towards trash and recycling single hauler, which I know they're interested in doing.
I think there's a difference there, Carson, in that the discussion, and I see your analogy, but I also see that trash haulers with their big heavy equipment take a toll on the city's roads, and that's certainly much different than an arborist driving a pickup truck. I think one thing that in the city's purchasing policy, there's a clause in there that says that we as employees should give special consideration to vendors within the city of Inglewood for whatever. So if we're selling cars or we're in the need of a police car, if there's a local dealership, we should give them special consideration because they are a business in the city of Inglewood. And I could see something like that. We do have a number of arborist companies who are located within the city of Inglewood. And yeah, I think it would be nice to give them that consideration. But I think to ace out other reputable and good businesses probably isn't good business practice.
I'm not suggesting we say that anyone has to use this bulk option. I'm saying coordinate a bulk option that makes it cheaper as an option. You can always go hire whatever arborist that's licensed you want. I like the promoting Inglewood arborists. That'd be great. But I'm just talking about a coordinated effort to make it cheaper for citizens, since so many citizens are going to need this.
so who would do something like that? Is that the city, or is that something that this committee would do?
I don't know. I think it'd be a really nice service for somebody to do. Maybe that would be something good for our committee to put some effort into. I don't know. I mean, we're code enforcement advisory, so it's not necessarily applicable. Member Johnson's got her hand up.
Monica?
I feel like I'm having deja vu. I know that Dave had mentioned that perhaps neighborhood watch groups could seek out such a deal. I don't have a problem with our committee doing something like that if that abides by, we're not breaking any rules by doing that. Just inquiring if that's possible. I see what you're saying, Carson. I think that's smart. And we're a long way off in Englewood from having those kind of city services that you hear about in some places where the city magically has the resources to take care of everything. So I think that, like, I mean, Carson, would that be something you would be interested in doing if we're allowed to, like, as part of, can Chair Bowden task somebody with that? And at least look into it?
I
And
wouldn't mind looking into it. I mean,
there you go.
I don't have any ash trees, but I know that it's going to be a real challenge for a lot of people to be able to afford or
Mhm.
coordinate, and anything that could be done to make that easier is going to benefit the city.
Chair, it's Maureen. Can I speak?
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry, Mar, I can't see people, so
Yeah, I know. Just as a side note, the advisory board cannot negotiate contracts. You're not allowed to. Only city council can approve and negotiate contracts. So as a private citizen, not representing the CEAC, you can of course inquire to see if the arborists would like to come together, however many there are, and give discounted rates. But you can only do that as a private citizen, not representing CEAC.
Is this why a neighborhood watch group would be a good group of people to do such a thing?
That's exactly why.
But a neighborhood watch group is, I mean, those certainly don't cover the whole city, and they're micro. It's not much of a collective bulk bargaining. The whole point of getting a good deal is bringing together a lot of people.
But you as a representative as a private citizen of Inglewood, you can go ahead and talk to
Yeah,
them.
I got it. I heard
Cannot
you.
represent yourself as CEAC.
I got it. But
Okay.
we also, as the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, could recommend to City Council that offering citizens a collective bargained option would be beneficial and help deal with this problem that's affecting the city's tree canopy and is going to hurt, a lot of older fixed income people. And, there's going to be massive financial burdens.
And Member Green, you're absolutely correct. That is your role as an advisory board to City Council, is to make recommendations. And you could make a recommendation stating to the City Council that you'd like Dave Lee or staff to look into doing a bulk set of prices for the city of Inglewood. That would be a recommendation that you would make to the City Council. And then the City Council can say, okay, we don't want to do it, or hey, that's kind of a good idea. We like your recommendations. We're going to tell the Parks Department to go out and see if they can get a deal for the citizens of Inglewood.
Okay, thank you.
So
You're welcome.
so Carson, we'll leave that on there. And along those lines, the next idea was to create a program for those who can't afford to treat or remove trees. And I think we've already talked through that several times. And Sonia had an example where the city actually worked with people in terms of helping them pay for tree removal. Another idea was to restore the urban forestry department, and Dave Lee is already working on that. Fulfill the requirements of the Tree City certification. Are we currently not a tree city? Colleen?
You are a tree city.
That's what I thought.
We are a tree city, but we aren't technically fulfilling all the requirements. I think one of the requirements was, having something like a city forestry department and a certain amount of money spent, and it's pretty minimal. And we've been it for 30 years, but we've dropped some of the requirements. We're not fulfilling them quite the same way. And there is a step up that Boulder qualifies for. And I just think that we could step up our endeavors in this area. by providing more trees for the tree sale, a lot more trees for the tree sale, and really ramping up and incentivizing that.
Thank you. So, and then the next one is to encourage the planting of at least 10,000 trees each year citywide on private property. And then we've talked about the next one several times, which is to establish a budget and fund to assist homeowners with issues of disposal, removal, treatment, etc. I think we've covered that several times. And then establishing a quarantine area for diseased trees, which we've already discussed. It doesn't mean that we won't do it. It just means we don't have the answer and the city doesn't have the resources or the land to do it right now. And negotiate with tree services companies, especially those in Inglewood, to inventory trees in the city and generally assess the health and removal needs. Did you want to expand on that? I think, Colleen, that was your idea. Colleen? Okay. I think she's dealing with the sick puppy, so we'll go ahead and move forward.
I got it. I think I unmuted.
Okay.
I think I've covered that, or we've covered it. So,
okay. And then same thing with the next one. We've just talked about negotiating with licensed pesticide certified tree service companies to provide low-cost treatment. And then establish and push a program to provide desirable trees available at low cost. And I think that we've talked about that too. So these are some great ideas. Is there any other topics that we haven't covered for the needs of the city, what the city would need to, in terms of moving forward to help prepare for and manage the infestation? Please,
Hi, Julie. I have a question.
Yes. Hi, Robert.
So earlier it was mentioned that the state needs to come in and identify the city as having an infestation. If that's, do we have that contact information? Do we have the timelines involved in the person coming out, taking the tree, getting it tested, and then what that means for any arborists going forward at that point?
Dave Lee, would you mind answering that?
Yes, I can answer that. Typically, that's going to be done by an arborist company. They may come out to prune or do something to an ash tree that somebody has and notice the telltale signs of EAB, and then they would take those branch samplings into the state for positive identification.
So who does that initial sample, or who gets the arborist to do that initial sample?
We all go through education requirements, and that's something that's been discussed. So again, anybody that's a certified arborist already knows this. If they suspect that it is EAB, they take the branches in and they do sampling and peelings off of the branches, but they have to confirm either the adult or the larva, and only the state can certify whether that's actually EAB or another insect pest.
And is there a timeline for that?
What do you mean as far as a timeline?
Well, once they take the sample, the larva or whatever, and then how long to then determine that it is an EAB infestation?
Probably just a matter of days.
Okay.
Okay. Any other ideas or thoughts or questions regarding city needs? And the last area is code enforcement. And Dave Lewis, and I know you're the most familiar with our current processes. Is there anything in your mind in terms of what can be done with code to help you do your job?
I don't believe that there is a major change or recommendation that would need to go through to the city attorney. I think the process is outlined, and so when we do get those complaints, I would feel more comfortable following the process that we currently have. And I don't believe once the tree's been identified as being diseased, I don't think we, maybe Dave Lee can correct me, I don't think we have an exigent circumstance where we would need to enter the property. It could go through possibly the 90-day process through the court system to get a court order to have it removed.
Okay. Are there any questions for Dave Lewis in terms of what code enforcement would need moving forward? I'm a little concerned about the, entering the private property, because when you look at the code, it's very clear that if the city sees, a diseased and dying tree, that the city has the right to enter the private property. And if the owner doesn't, remediate it, then the city has the right to do it and then charge the owner for it.
And was that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay, so the way that the code is written, or the way constitutional law is written, is we can't enter someone's property, a fenced off property, or do an inspection outside of the public right of way, is unless there's an exigent circumstance, and that can be defined by mostly animal welfare issues. It does not, and West Nile was also an exception at one point. But we don't have the constitutional authority to go onto somebody's property unless there's an exigent circumstance. So our inspection needs to be done by the public right of way. So that would be sidewalk, where anybody would have reasonable access. So where the mail might be delivered. So up to the front door, we can inspect from the alleyway. We can't go peeking over 6-foot privacy fences. However, neighbors, if they're educated and informed, can be a witness and can move the process along. But they would be the one that would need to testify in court that this is an emerald ash tree. But by the time we see a tree, we're going to be able to see it from most lots within the city from a public right of way. And we can still, even if we're not sure, we can still order that inspection by an arborist. For example, we have a case, I think this might clarify it. We did have a case at a property where the property was larger than a typical lot. A complaint was made by a neighbor that a tree was diseased. We could not see that tree from the public right of way. However, the neighbor's witness statement served as the document for probable cause or reasonable suspicion for us to go ahead and issue an arborist requirement. And then they contacted, had the arborist come out, and the arborist said the tree was not diseased, it just needed some pruning. So we have ways to do that, to honor people's constitutional rights when it comes to our inspections. The other way that we'd be able to enter a property is if a police officer's on the property and they're there for an exigent circumstance, let's say a medical condition, and they happen to see the state of someone's backyard and they notify us, well, that exigent circumstance is there, we can enter the property at that time.
What is the, so that you mentioned 90 days, would that be from when you first identify that? Is that from when you file an emergency tree notice?
So I know what you're getting at. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So I mentioned 90 days because that's the average time to gain voluntary compliance if we go through the court system, rather than getting a court order. Understand that our codes, like I've said, are written as criminal. And so that person is entitled to all of the rights up to and including a jury trial for a tree, which could be up to a year for resolution. The tree notice is 45 days. So once we issue the notice of violation, that person has 45 days to seek a professional arborist, licensed professional arborist, to render a professional written opinion about that tree.
Okay, so if they were pushing that till the 45th day, then you guys find out that the arborist says it is a diseased tree or a tree that needs work, then what would be the timeline that the homeowner would have to deal with what they have to do?
We give them an official posting notice of 14 days, just like with any other nuisance. If they don't come into compliance within that 14 days, they don't communicate, or they say, oh, this arborist is scheduled out and it's going to be 21 days before they can get here, we'll work with that particular resident. But if at any time we see no progress or movement, then we would go ahead and issue a summons to court.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Lewis.
You're welcome.
So I was listening to the timeframes, Dave, and looking at the code. It seems like our code doesn't match with your current process in terms of time.
Yeah, I noticed that too. But there's not really any mention of 14 days in there, is there?
Mm-mm.
Well, that would refer back to, because it would be considered a nuisance. And so we have to follow the 14-day official posting to allow them that time to correct it. If they don't get back to us within the 45 days, then we issue a summons. But if they get back to us within the 45 days, we allow them that 14-day window, because we'll go ahead and issue a posting based off of the rendering from the arborist. We can't just issue that posting without having that information to allow them to correct the problem.
Okay.
I would say most of the time we have not run into a problem with people seeking an arborist within those 45 days. We had one particular case and that went straight to court and they were ordered to cut their tree.
Okay.
And just to clarify, if you notified someone about a questionable tree and they just cut it down, got rid of it, they wouldn't have to deal with the arborist then, right?
No, a property owner does have the right. My neighbor helped me. We cut down a tree from our property. You have the absolute right as a property owner to maintain, cut down, trim trees, shrubs, bushes on your own property.
That's what I figured. I just meant like if you had given them notice about they have to have an arborist opinion, but then they got rid of the tree, that would eliminate the request for the arborist opinion,
That case
right?
would be closed as voluntary compliance because the nuisance no longer exists.
That's what I figured. Thank you.
Dave,
Great questions tonight.
Yeah, how often do we have to, go ahead and remove a tree and then we charge the homeowner cost plus 25%? Do we do that very often?
No. In the last 2 years, we've only abated a property once where we physically, recently outside of the weeds, any major nuisance once. And that was a court order. We very rarely have to, we usually get voluntary compliance or the court does. So it's a very rare extreme circumstance.
Right. Okay. Would it make sense during like an infestation like this is if an owner can't, pay for the tree, to treat or remove the tree themselves and the city steps in, that we remove the 25% additional cost?
I can't answer that because that's actually outlined in our ordinance when we go forward with that process. So that would be something that city council would need to come up with, or a recommendation of you all. But you do need to take into consideration the amount of staff time and resources that it goes into once we go through that process, including the accounting portion. And then making that request and then leaning the property. It becomes very costly to the city.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Dave? Oh, Monica. I see a hand.
Thank you, Dave Lewis, for that information. I just kind of wanted to take a step back and think about the fact that this is a time-sensitive issue, and doing things through council takes a little while. And the work that the code enforcement team does is, I mean, you're doing a lot of work, and this, I just want to stress the fact that one of our objectives is to educate the public and help them to see the value of the mature trees that they have. And I really hope that that can be the focus, because like Dave said, they are really good at getting voluntary compliance. So I just would like to continue to view this as an educational campaign rather than a punitive code enforcement campaign. By the time a tree has been affected by emerald ash borer, it's gone. There's nothing you can do by the time you see the canopy starting to be decimated. And maybe Dave, you can correct me, one of the Daves, but I think the danger of a dead tree is that it can fall on something, and that's a long ways down the road. So it's kind of an insidious foe we're fighting here. By the time you know it's there, it's too late. And you know, as a citizen committee, I just think that that's, you know, the most important thing that we can do, considering that by the time you do something and see a problem, it's too late.
Okay, so for next steps, what does the committee see us doing? I mean, I feel like we've done everything that we can do. We've informed ourselves and we've talked to a lot of experts. We've got the communications aspect rolling, thanks to Monica and her team. I'm hearing there's minor adjustments to our code, but that's obviously something that would be our next step, is what adjustments to code do we see need to happen? But there's also a list of suggestions that we have that aren't related to code itself, but are related to the city adopting some programs to help residents during this time. And then basically those recommendations would go to city council. Does anyone see it differently than that? Okay. All right. So what I would propose is I do have a list of proposed code changes that have come to me from some of the committee members and that we've talked about over the past year, that I can compile all those and have us look at those at our next meeting, and then also compile a list of recommendations / programs that the city could consider. And then we decide where to go from there. What do members think about that?
I think that sounds good. I mean, probably while we discuss your list in our next meeting, we can prioritize what makes
Okay.
sense to put some effort into writing up as a recommendation to city council.
Okay. All right. I will take that on as my next step. So, and then going back to the agenda, there were a couple of documents that we attached to the agenda, the packet. One was ash tree identification, which Dave's already talked about. There's also an EAB homeowners guide. And then I provided Dave's updated management plan. I also attached an email about an online workshop for Your Ashes on the Line. If anyone on the committee is interested in attending that, it's free. And if you do attend, let us know. We'd love to hear what you learn. And with that, I'm going to close this agenda item and move forward to agenda item number 5, to code enforcement significant events.
Hey, y'all. First off, I want to thank all of you and commend you for the work that you're doing on this project. I don't think everybody realizes the extent that this committee and their valuable voices is contributing to what's going to be coming with this Emerald Ash borer. So from my team, I want to thank you for that. Give you a few updates. The first thing and the biggest thing is you'll notice that there are no statistics, and I want to give you a technological update in where we are. We now all have issued mobile computers that go in our vehicles, where we're able to view calls for service, run license plates, and run people's names. That's the first step in our transition. Moving to our RMS, which is our standardized reporting systems for the police, we officially will start our testing of the new programming systems on April 1st, with an additional training on April 8th, followed by a go live date of May 1st. So it will be officially transferred into the systems by May 1st. The delay for this has been code enforcement's very unique, and we had to have some specialized templates made within the system to accommodate the needs that we have with animals, vaccinations, and a bunch of other posting notices that are required under our ordinances. So that's why it's taken a little bit long to do that build out. Once that transition happens, I hope to have this quarter completed and the statistics all compiled for you all for the last couple months. So I apologize for that. I'm just not able to provide those at this time during our transition. So I hope you all understand. A COVID update, as you guys all know, for a while we were part of the COVID enforcement. We are no longer providing that support in our capacity from the city unless we're asked for that. We have our complaints to the police department and to code enforcement regarding any kind of enforcement has substantially decreased. So the need for our enforcement is no longer continuing. I shouldn't say enforcement, educational campaign. Along those lines, we are very fortunate here within the codes division, and that includes fire marshals as well. And I'm not violating any HIPAA because all of them have been very open about this. But I'd like to share that the codes division is one of the fully vaccinated divisions within the city of Inglewood. So all the code officers and all the fire marshals have voluntarily elected to take the vaccine, and we have completed all of our rounds, plus our 2-week waiting period. So I really want to thank the city and the state and the governor for, and our legislative bodies for getting that all administered and taken care of. We're very fortunate to work for the city of Inglewood and coordinating that for all of us. On that note, I believe over 75% of the police department has been vaccinated, and they're just waiting for some more appointments to open up for some other partners. So you should be very proud of the city and how they've rolled that out. There's also going to be a vaccination site that's going to be implemented within the next 2 weeks at the Malley Center. You may have heard that. Code enforcement may be assisting with some of the needs that may arise from traffic or coordination as needed as an extra assignment. We're participating in the upcoming extravaganza that you may see published on March 27th. I think we have over 550 vehicles or families that are signed up to visit and do the drive-through experience and receive some type of a gift or publicized information. And so code enforcement and the park ranger will be participating in that in a public relations mode. We've had amazing feedback in reference to the park ranger. I know city council has received some emails as well as the park and recreation committee, and it also has gone out in several updates. I'm very happy to hear this positive feedback, although it has been met slightly with a little bit of resistance by a few members of the public. You may hear about these in the future. We have had non-compliant citizens who refuse to comply with directives and have verbally assaulted a park ranger or a code officer, and we are getting police involved with those matters. So I do want to let you know that those have occurred, and we're still continuing with education, but we're very disappointed that it has become such a hostile environment towards us. You'll see a council request came out updating on our education, I would take a look and be familiar with the process and what code officers are required to do by state law and our ongoing educational credits. So that is a very good reference, just so you all know about that. Have I discussed the nuisance abatement processing of task force?
I don't think so.
So several months ago, the city deemed that it would be appropriate for some of our more problem nuisance areas to put together a task force. And I believe Member Russell has been briefed or maybe slightly informed of this, where we meet every 2 weeks to discuss any kind of nuisance within the city. And we take a multiple prong approach through multiple different divisions throughout the city to come up with a solution and a plan. And we staff out a process on how we are going to move forward with enforcing our ordinances, as well as potential state ordinances related to different activities. So we're looking at this from like an abandoned properties standpoint, non-compliance business, a business that might be repeated polluter or illegal dumper. And so we're really approaching those from a more proactive approach, which is very unique for this area. The last thing is I'd like to let you know that a couple weeks ago, I've had a title change based on the responsibilities that have been given to me outside of what I was originally hired for, and in keeping more in line with the city of Inglewood and where the codes division is going. My title has been changed from supervisor to codes manager. And so I'm managing the codes division that would include the seasonal weed person. We are hiring a new seasonal weed person since it was so successful last year. The park ranger program, as well as the code enforcement animal welfare officers. So I did have a realignment of my title and my duties.
Great. Carson, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the big snow event and how that's affected. Like, one thing I'm still totally not completely clear about is, as a citizen, what is the definitive place to go look for when the snow stopped?
So the state is a bit strange as the way they collect data, or they're required to collect data. And so it has to be done from typically an airport. So I think we discussed this previously.
You said Centennial Airport, right?
It is Centennial Airport. That is the standard that we have to use for the measurement of when precipitation may have ended.
So is that the NOAA Gov pin on the Centennial Airport, as far as like, where do you access the data?
So you should be able to go to the NOAA website and access the zip code, and it typically would put you into, it'll pop up as the city of Centennial or Centennial Airport. And
Okay.
so that's where most of the large major weather events would have been reported.
Okay. Has the city considered, I mean, you may not know this, but just putting that on the city website so a citizen can see when the snow stopped without having to go hunt through NOAA?
We can look at that with the communications team. Typically, we also do an informative information that goes out saying it's been 24 hours. We did not do that after this storm because we had another storm that came in. So our timeframes are a bit discombobulated, and enforcement again would start up tomorrow at just after noon.
Right. Yeah. It snowed midday today. Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it did.
Thank you, codes manager Lewis.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Manager Lewis? All right. So we're over our 2-hour meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and propose that we conclude the meeting, and then we'll start our April meeting with an update from Councilmember Russell, and then go into election of a chair and vice chair. Are there any other topics that we want to discuss at our April meeting? Dave?
It's not a topic, it's more of a procedure thing. I think in the past, with voting, you all nominated some people at a particular meeting and then come back to do the voting.
Okay.
Maybe, Colleen, it's been different. Okay. For some reason, I remember that from a past meeting.
Carson, did you have your hand raised? No? Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I
topics?
did, but I realized that what I was going to bring up will automatically be addressed by something else. So
Okay.
I'm fine.
So Dave, was your recommendation that we do the nomination at first and then the following meeting we have a vote?
It's however you all want to handle it, and maybe Maureen can contribute to this part.
You could do the nomination now and vote on it now. You're only 4 minutes over if that's what you want to do.
Okay, I'm okay with going ahead and doing nominations for president or for chair and vice chair. So I'd like to open the floor for nominations for for chair. Monica?
Chair Bowden, I nominate you for chair.
Second.
All right. Are there further nominations for chair? Okay. Nominations for co-chair or vice chair? I would like to ask Carson to do it again. I'd like to
I
nominate
second
Carson
that.
Green. Okay. I think that we can go ahead and have a vote at this point since we don't have more than one nomination for each of those positions. So those in favor of nominating Chair Bowden as the future chair, please raise your hand as a statement of aye.
Oh. Okay, I can't see everyone, so everybody's gonna, thank you.
Looks like you're unanimous.
Yep.
Thank you all. And then voting for vice chair, those in favor of Carson Green, please raise your hand as a form of aye. There we go. And that looks like that's also unanimous. Thank you. Well, that was easy. We can take that off the agenda. And then one other request that I have for Carson, Sonia, and I believe it's Robert. Your terms are up in July. I know it's odd that you've just been not put on the committee, but you were basically taking over somebody's seat. And we need to have your answer back within the next week, because they'll go to try and fill any vacancies. So I just need to know if you guys plan to continue staying on the committee. If you'll, and you can, don't tell me now, just send me an email and let me know what your plans are. And then Colleen, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was expecting to be able to vote individually, and I just wanted to say I've admired your leadership and I fully support you.
Thank you very much, Colleen. I appreciate that. Was there, okay, so that's it. We're gonna
No,
go.
next meeting. When's your next meeting?
Thank you. Would be April. That looks like April 21st. April 21st, it is. Thank you all. Have a nice evening. I appreciate all the hard work you all put into this committee. We're doing great.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Julie. Thank you,
Thank you.
Carson.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, everybody else.
Thank you. Bye.